We do a roll call, please?
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mrs. Brandt? Here. Mr. Klinkner?
Here.
Mrs. Hendrickson?
Here.
Mr. Shavlik?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
And Mrs. Zamini?
Written notice of this meeting was sent to the news media on Friday, January 10th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please.
Make the motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, approved minutes from the last meeting. Seems like a while. Been December 9th, our last regular board meeting. So welcome to 2025 school board session, everybody. Any comments, questions, or corrections needed on the minutes from the December 9th meeting that anybody noticed? If not, then I'd look for a motion to approve December 9th regular board meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Invited visitors and guests. We have two tonight. We'll start out with Summer School 2025 and Melanie Kozlowski, the summer school principal.
It's getting to be that time. It's beginning to look a lot like summer. No? It looks like it just doesn't feel like it, right? So we have our summer school booklet. I have it all in electronic form this year to save a little bit of paper. So we have quite a few new classes on the docket. These are all enrichment, so we're talking like the things that are going to come home in the booklet that you can pick for your, say, outgoing second through outgoing eighth grader. So there's an advanced junior raters strength and conditioning. This is designed to build upon the program that Mr. Jansky runs during the mornings at LB Clark. So kids who have completed that will then continue into this for summer, should they wish to, optional obviously. We have quite a few new art classes. We have art at the table, endangered animals, glow-in-the-dark art, and then insects, snakes, and crawly things. I don't know if I'm going to go in there during that last one, but the rest of them sound really cool and things I want to do. I'm not sure about the crawly things, that one. I think they'll be making cool things, but I don't know that I want to touch them. We have some new FIED-based classes as well. So we have Energy Explorers FIED and Power Play FIED. Those are the we're going to play a lot of sports and talk about teamwork, but for the younger grades versus the older grades. We have a lacrosse this year that's going to be for outgoing second all the way through outgoing eighth graders, broken up into different segments of ages as appropriate for the kidlets. And then pickleball for beginners, which is pretty exciting. When that one came through, I was like, ooh. So I think that one's going to be really neat. And we have Lego Explorations. So that was a new one there. Another new class that we've listed here is Swimming Level 5. The rec department has expanded their offerings for summer. So remember, our swimming classes are ones that we offer in conjunction with the rec department booklet. So there is a fee for that, and it is staffed as a joint effort, a team effort between the Two Rivers Public Schools and the Two Rivers Rec Department. They provide the instructors, and then we'll provide support within the locker rooms, and then we'll also be providing an on-deck person this year in addition to any on-deck people they will be providing. But they'll provide the instructors. And we have quite a few returning favorites. So most of the things that we offered in the last couple years have returned. A couple adjustments, such as Summer Snackin' is a rebranding of the Snack Waves class last year. They took the food class and they rebranded it as Snack Waves last year because it was going to be all microwavable snacks that kids could create themselves. Decided to do a little bit more rebranding on it and turned it into Summer Snackin' instead. But otherwise very similar in the class. I'm not sure if the recipes are going to be exactly the same, but just a slight rebranding of that. And then we also have one thing that's still a little up in the air. It does say TBD. The theater workshop will be running again this year. Just have a, excuse me. we just don't have what program they're going to be doing yet. So remember last year they did Lion King, they did Aladdin the year before. I can't wait to find out what they're going to do this year because it's always really exciting things. I do have the actual booklet attached further in this Google slide presentation, and it should be available for anybody to see should you wish to like look through all the fine print. It's very similar to the ones last year. It's just the new classes with the new ordering of hours. I apologize. I'm sorry. No, I'm okay. A couple other things. So we will continue with the Jumpstart programming this year. So last year, if you recall, we had to bring it all to the high school because of some construction at the elementary schools. There just wasn't the availability to hold it at Koenig. In talking to the people involved in Jumpstart, both at the end of the session last year, and then again in November or December this year, I want to say it probably was the end of October. End of October, I apologize, I was wrong on my dates there because the sign-up sheet for teaching classes went out on November 1st, I want to say. I asked again, are there any barriers to holding it in one building? Because it kind of worked really well. I was not anticipating it actually working as smoothly with all the bodies in the same building, but there was so much flow between the entities. So like I could be in both places at once. I didn't have to be like, oh, there's something going on at Koenig. Let me get in my car and tootle my way over there. Yeah, that was me driving, sorry. Tootle my way over there and like, I'm there 10 minutes later and now whatever was, needing my attention maybe has resolved and now there's something here. It also was really nice for Jamie Rohr, who's our school nurse. She was able to be in both places all the time. Traffic was a little bit bumpy, but I think we'll have 2 entrances this year, so that should work out really well. We're going to start enrollment for Jumpstart on the February 10th conference week, so I'll make sure to get, pending your approval, of course, papers to the elementary schools a little bit ahead of that because you know that conference week is the 10th, but sometimes things happen early or late depending upon schedules of teachers and guardians. We are going to return to paper enrollments, though, this year. It just seemed like it worked better. I don't really like that as my answer, but we didn't get as many enrollments on the Google form, which I thought, oh, how easy. We'll just put the QR code there. Parents or guardians can just, while they're waiting for their conference. Didn't go that way, and then we sent home, some teachers keep track of who, from their classes registered, and they couldn't tell, and I was sending them information back and forth. Oh, little Tim's daddy enrolled him, but Jennifer's daddy did not, or whatever, we have those things. And then they sent home paper forms, and then I got duplicates, and I just need one method, and the paper methods seem to be smoother, at least so far. I'm not super thrilled about it, but it just seemed to be the better option. So we're going to go back to paper this year. Maybe we can go forward with the Google form in the future, but not this year. We are going to, of course, offer the Edmentum credit recovery option for the high school students. We will be having the literacy boot camp as far as the Act 20 programming goes. And those students will be invited to attend at the February 10th conference week as well. I have been assured that they'll have that information ready to go about which kiddos have a PRP, that personalized reading plan, and we'll solicit parental familial consent at that point. We can then get those scheduled before we open up enrollment to everybody. And then there is going to be an additional fractions boot camp this year. So if you may or may not recall, 2 summers ago, in the summer of 2023, we had a math boot camp that was run by our 4 math teachers here at the high school. Really great program. They called families, they got kids signed up, and they did their thing, and they filled gaps, and it was great. They've noticed that is something that is necessary at the middle school in terms of fractions understanding and processing. So they're going to be doing that for outgoing 7th graders and outgoing 8th graders. That will be in same situation. So families will be invited to attend by the math team at Clark if they need support. I mean, of course, I'm here again. So it'll function the same thing. It'll be a 1-hour block, though, I believe, and not a 2-hour block. And it'll be for all 5 weeks. Same hours, same building. As I said, all classes are going to be at the high school this year. That doesn't mean we won't maybe go back to 2 buildings next year, but this year, again, we're going to keep it all here. Jumpstart will be held in a block of rooms within the non-enrichment environment, and I have a slide on the next, a picture on the next slide of what I'm proposing for the rooms. Buses will pick up again after lunch. the lunch last year was amazing. Kids were hungry. They ate. They were fed. They didn't bring food on the bus, which also was like kind of a win for pretty much everybody involved. And it was a hot lunch. It wasn't, here's a bag of stuff, go, which is fine. It's a fine option. But they had a hot, warm lunch every day, except for the day that there was the theater program. That was a big lunch because cafeteria use. There is a family handbook now that will be published, and that is going to be linked into the paper copy of the handbook, and there'll be also digital copies of it going out as well. It was taken primarily out of the high school handbook and then adapted for summer school, so all ages. I looked at the handbooks from the 2 elementary schools, the one that was online from LB Clark and the one that was online from the high school, but the 2 elementary schools have PDFs. So that is linked in there for your viewing pleasure. Very exciting reading. And then there's the course booklet for you to peruse as well. Again, very similar to past years. New logo. And the links in there now go to Infinite Campus instead of Skyward. We are not opening it up to enrollment, though, outside of Jumpstart and the elementary boot camp for literacy until right around the middle of March. And that's the reason is because there is no summer school entity built in IC yet. It has to get built, and then all the classes need to be built in there. So that's going to take some time once they're approved. I'm anticipating, and what's written in the course booklet is that Friday before spring break. If we're able to go the Friday before that, we'll just change the date. That'd be ideal. And then we're putting a close date on registration again on April 30th. That gives us time to secure the staffing we need for individual support people as well as like classroom level support people, and then get all the other pieces into place for like who's going to be outside during bus drop off and family drop off, who's going to be manning this door, who's covering the cafeteria, and all those other pieces get to, we don't feel like we're scrambling at the very end, which unfortunately I did not cut off in registration early enough that first year, and I almost lost my mind. I didn't though, so it worked out okay. So again, this is sort of what we're looking at in terms of where we would put the Jumpstart. I would start building it up from room 317 there on the very bottom right-hand corner. That's the room where Mr. Whitting is now, and go up those rooms. So I would anticipate at least those first 3 on the bottom, and then perhaps a literacy boot camp for outgoing kinder, 3 more literacy boot camp, and so on and so forth around that corner. So as many of those as we would need. It might not be all of them, though. It might be a lesser quantity. That's actually more than what we've had historically as far as classrooms. But we've got them sort of earmarked. That way they're out of the general population of the other kids shifting classes. What questions, doubts, or concerns do you have at this time?
I had a couple, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and if
Please
this
do.
isn't the place to talk about it, or if you don't know, that's fine. But I was thinking about like the boot camps and the jump starts, and you were saying that students are invited. So sometimes people think of summer school as remedial, like you have to go to summer school, but are there certain students that are required? I know you can't require, but that you earmark or invite? Is that what you mean by invite?
So for Jumpstart to kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, all students are invited to attend those classes. That is the extension of the school year program. So kinder and first grade are more like you're within your classroom. Second grade, or pardon me, Jumpstart to second grade this year, we are, I'm sorry. We are having sort of an enrichment period in there with the teachers who want to offer, like maybe Wendy's an expert on painting on canvas to small humans, instructing that. So her class would have that, and then they might shift over with Zach's class, and they would trade classes for an hour and have some sort of an enrichment. So they have another piece of something bigger and better. For boot camp, for the literacy boot camp, that's going to be for current kinder through current fourth graders, and those students who have a personalized reading plan based on the testing being done, I believe, right now. Is that correct, Kyle? Being done right now. They're the ones who are going to be invited to have that extended school year for their literacy. That was a 2-hour block last year. We're going to go down to a 1-hour block. From the feedback of the teachers who taught it last year, they said 2-hour block was too much for the kidlets to do this. So a 1-hour block would be fine. we have like one teacher per grade level-ish. There might be some intermingling with that depending upon specific needs, but earmarked one teacher for current kinder, current first, current second, current third, current fourth, which is actually an extension from what the state requires. I believe the state only requires it as to outgoing third or outgoing second. Kyle, can you help me here? Third? Outgoing third. So we have extended it by a year because why not? Better for the kids. The fractions boot camp, that is going to be by invitation only based on information I believe obtained by the STAR test. Is that accurate, Tim and Daniel? Oh, I see. The fractions boot camp that's going to be offered for the outgoing 7th and 8th graders, that is going to be based on STAR data. Is that correct? Yep, so that'll be based on STAR data. So they will have a targeted group of, we need this 16 or 18 kids to attend. And they'll start making individual familial phone calls to be like, hey there, Mr. Shavlik, we need Gary to attend this fractions boot camp. Here's the evidence that we have about it. Would you be able to commit to signing him up for that? And actually, we'll do the behind the scenes signing him up for it. So it'll already be in there as a placeholder when Gary's family goes in to register him for other classes or not. Which is another reason why we have the slightly delayed. Like, number one, it won't be ready to launch during conferences week. It's just with the amount of stuff that needs to happen behind the scenes, yet with the whole new system, it just can't, I'm sorry. But that'll also give us time to build in those things of those personal invitations for the fractions boot camp and for the elementary literacy boot camp. Although, now that I'm thinking about that, perhaps boot camp is maybe not the best word for both. Elementary fractions or middle school fractions experience. But so the two boot camps will be by invitation only based on testing data being done approximately now.
Okay. Is there any elementary math boot camp or anything like that, like there is for reading ELA?
There is not at this time. However, there are two math classes that Mary Glaser is offering. She's offering Jumpstart to Multiplication and Division and Creative Math, which are both obviously math heavy and fun too. We don't have a math boot camp at this time.
Okay, so we're not looking at
We're not there yet.
inviting kids, but that might be a future.
Right. So when family members, they do contact me and they're like, hey, so little Diane, she's struggling in math. I don't see that there's like a math boot camp. We were invited to this literacy one, but what about math? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, here's what Diane could take. Maybe not both or maybe one each semester. And those are both each semester, like they're offered for the full 5 weeks.
And then I was wondering about, because I don't know the summer school that well, I should know better.
You can come visit us at any time.
But is there a requirement, or do you need to, or doesn't it matter for summer school to tie the topics or the curriculum, I guess, to standards?
So that's actually a discussion that Kyle and I have been having as to how to start heading more in that direction. Now, I don't think that anybody's picking up stuff and going, wow, this looks like something fun that has nothing to do with anything. We should do this. Are there elements of that in there? Sure, because it's summer school and it's got to be fun. But I don't see a single class that's on offer that doesn't have a tie-in to standards, even if it's not formally written out in a curriculum map. However, that actually has been a conversation Kyle and I have been having since, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at our dates and our agendas. I'm sorry.
It's nice. We have such a good turnout, and it's popular, and there's a lot of staff and families supporting it, so take advantage of that. And
We have been keeping that on the radar, though. Like, what are you already doing stuff? You're already doing stuff to meet the standards. Let's figure out how we can document what those things are. Mm-hmm. So I think that probably is our next step. I don't know that we're going to get there before this summer school session starts this year. Perhaps at the end, maybe we can have them reflect on, all right, now that we've told you about, we want you to be looking at it, like, can you pull out a few places where you feel like it does meet the standards? We should probably formalize that process.
But it is summer school, and just getting
Sure.
the kids having fun in the building is great.
Right, a positive school experience, and maybe not everybody has that on the regular.
And then hunter safety, I was going to ask if I didn't see it. Are
It
we
was
doing
on there,
that?
yep.
I thought I read somewhere that you could get a half a credit if you complete a certified hunter safety.
I don't think that is something that we're offering in that way. Perhaps other districts offer something similar to that. We don't have that because that would have had to come before the board back in November. I hadn't heard that.
It might be just something to look into the future. I thought I saw
Defo.
it in some state statute or something like that. You're eligible. I don't know.
I don't think that we'll be offering it for the half credit this summer. However, it is on there for just the DNR certification. That one also does come with a course fee of, I believe, $10 payable to the DNR on the first class period. It will be offered in the June session this year because that's the shorter session for the amount of hours.
That's great. That's a great opportunity.
It is, and it's going to be paired with the fishing class like it was last year, where they'll go out and about in the greater Two Rivers, Manitowoc, Mishicot area to actually fish.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And my last question, sorry, for the kids like Fraction Boot Camp, they're invited. There's 15 of them, and 4 of them can't make it or aren't interested. Is there something that is offered to them online or just?
I don't think so. I think it is an in-person only. I did not hear that this teacher was going to offer an online monitored piece to it. I do believe that there will be some online monitored piece to the in-person class, like IXL or something similar, but there was nothing mentioned in the rest of it that this is what they were doing. However, when Kyle and I made phone calls the year that we ran the regular math boot camp, we were working on the LB Clark list. I want to say like 90 or 95% of the parents said yes, and they signed their kids up. So it had, I think it really had a good response from families.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else? You just channel all the questions that way. No? Okay.
No, that looks great, and thank you again for all your energy and efforts in this area.
Maybe just not on the first day.
No, like the third day would be really good. Fourth, somewhere in there.
Oh, that's exciting. Next up, Ray Claudel, our IT director, with some updates.
Welcome to 2025. We made it. It's hard to believe that I've been in my position for 6 months now, which is pretty wild, hitting the ground running with the referendum and everything else. But I just wanted to share a couple things. First thing, I'm going to focus on the students. I have a couple pictures here of the brand new CAD/Fab Lab that's at LB Clark. With help from both Shane and Caden Wingrove, we were able to install 25 computers into this room, which will be used to train students with CAD, Fab, any other sort of computer-aided design. I know there's going to be discussion between high school teachers and middle school teachers on how we can create a game plan to learn things in middle school and implement them also in high school as they make the transition over here. So here's just a couple pictures of the lab. With our vendor CDWG, I was able to negotiate some pricing in this room. Retail, this room was well over $60,000 for everything, and I got it for under $30,000. So I was super happy to make that happen. Everything is MSI computers. Everything's running Windows 11, and as you can see, they do shine up. They are pretty. My favorite reaction was Tim Wester and I were talking, and students were walking past the room, and just the gasps and the ahs and the whoa, we have this, was a really amazing feeling, because I'm sure that's how I would have acted if I was in middle school back then too. So look, if you just want to click through a couple of them. So my plan is to keep them all purple and yellow, which is always great too, so you sort of have a theme in the room. I'm super excited for this space. But now, the big thing. When I was hired 6 months ago, I was asked one very important question from Jennifer Hendrickson was, what are you going to do about our phones and our internet? And I can proudly say that right now, as of October of this past year, we have backup internet thanks to Starlink. And as of last Friday, we have backup phones thanks to Charter Spectrum. So we will not be dealing with those phone issues for a while now, hopefully, knock on wood. So problem solved. With that being said, you know, we all have our phone numbers, LB Clark being 1614, 4022 for attendance office, 2291 for the high school. I am going to be doing a little bit of talking with Charter Spectrum to see what it would take to transition those numbers as being hosted on Frontier's lines over to Charter Spectrum, which has much more better reliability. if anything were to happen with the Frontier lines going down, both Luke and I will send out a communication out to families saying our primary phone service provider is not available. Please use these lines. These are the 5 phone numbers, one for each of the school and one including the district office. Also coming up with documentation to provide to all the principals, as well as right now we dial 8 to dial it over Frontier. Right now you dial 7, you dial it over Spectrum. So they're always live all the time. So I'm super excited to finally get that done. So besides everything going on with the referendum, those were my 2 big tasks happening behind the scenes. So I'm finally able just to check those off my list. Other than that, as we transition into, the next phase of the referendum and future projects, I've been working on compiling a list, talking to every single school, spoke to a couple teachers over at LB Clark today to say, hey, what would you think of a Clever Touch being putting in your room? Because we did purchase 42 of them, but there are a couple key classrooms like health, STEAM, the conference room at the middle school that do need devices placed within them as well. So I just want to make sure that every room has a device over there. So that's going to be really my number 1 priority. And my other big one is expanding Wi-Fi and security at the high school. I would really like to get Wi-Fi as far as the complex would go, out to the baseball diamonds and things like that, add security and things like that just for everyone's safety. So those are pretty big updates. So questions, comments, concerns, words of wisdom.
Oh, thank you for that.
Of
Those
course.
important things. We appreciate
Very.
that. How's the Chromebook situation?
Well, Chromebook situation, we purchased a lot of Chromebooks this year. The biggest transition was that we went no longer in a 1-to-1 model over at LB Clark. But now every classroom has a lock-in charge with devices installed in them, including all the Encore classes. The Encore classes were sort of out of sight, out of mind when it came to getting devices in, but now every single classroom has a set of Chromebooks in them, even including art, so that they use it to look up references and things like that. Future state of Chromebooks is to transition everything over to Dell Chromebooks. I love the way they work, and I would love to give everyone on the same page. So that's currently where we are now.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else? Okay, have a great night.
Thanks, Ray. Public comment? I don't see anyone signed up, or, no? Okay. Communications.
We have 2 thank you cards for the pizza stones, and then just a reminder, and you probably got this in your home mail from WASB on a law conference that's coming up if you might be interested in that.
All right, thank you. Financial statement section here, so 4 things. First are the bills from December 2024 in the amount of $940,588.72. Any questions or comments on those bills from anyone? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve payment.
I'll make a motion to approve payment of December's bills.
Second.
All right. All in favor of approving payment for December 2024 bills, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. B and C are the referendum bills, kind of part 1 and part 2. So part 1 was December 2024 in the amount of $625,828.34. And then we had a second, part 2 of the bills, also from December 2024. That was $124,688.03. Any questions or concerns on either of those set of bills? If there are none, I look for a motion to approve payment for those bills to be paid. Oh, okay. December 2024, part 1.
I will make a motion to approve part 1 of the December 24 referendum bills.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of approving December part 1 referendum bills, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope, motion carries. And then referendum bills, the second half, just still December, I'd look for a motion to approve payment.
I'll make a motion to approve the second half of December 2024 bills.
Second.
Referendum bills, excuse
Second.
me.
Okay. All All right, all in favor approving referendum bills, Part 2, December 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, last but not least, are the financial statements for November 2024. Any comments, questions on anything in there? If there are none, we'd look for a motion to approve and file the financial statements for November 2024.
I'll make the motion to approve the November 2024 bills.
Second.
Second.
All right, so these are the financial statements from November 2024. All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mary Kay and the business team for putting that together as always. Board committee reports. Facility technology. Looks like February 3rd, there's a meeting schedule, right? So that's kind of getting that committee back, post-referendum, post-build, post-construction, and just sort of into routine business for that committee. So February 3rd.
I have a question, Diane. Do we still have Michael Hacker, Cadence on retainer yet? So we're still working with them?
Yes.
Okay.
We talked to him about after we are completely finished. He did let us know if we needed him for bits and pieces, we could do that. We actually just talked about it today with Adam, and our feeling was, once we're done with the big project with L.B. Clark, we most likely won't need him. That doesn't mean we can't use him if we need to.
All right, negotiations and finance, next meeting, January 16th, so that'll kick off this year's review. And continuing on the finance side of things, policy, we've got us, next meeting is January 29th, 2025. And I'm sure we'll have one or two more after that to just finish up things that are coming up. Anything else from board committees? I don't see anything under old business, no. So that'll get us to new business, and the first item is a big beefy one, and that's some info on Act 20, so a status on that.
Evening, everybody. We've got a big group with us today, and we wanted to share our updates on Act 20 because we're really in the midst of it, and we know that our teachers are working incredibly hard. We wanted to update you on the work that they are doing. We know that our students are working incredibly hard, and for the folks watching at home, it's another opportunity to let everybody know what Act 20 reading legislation is here in the state of Wisconsin, and what we're doing to be able to support our students throughout that effort. In any type of leadership, there's this need, in order to be successful, to look at the type of leadership that you're trying to foster and make sure that you're missional in the work that you're doing. This past summer, we had gotten the opportunity to come back together and set that mission, vision, and our values. And we utilized a group of 70 folks to come together to do that. In every large meeting and large conversation that we have had this year, we start by looking at that mission, vision, and values. In order for these things to take root, you have to have them constantly in front of you. So before I go on, what I'd like everybody to do is just take a look at our mission, vision, and our values. It should take you about 2.5 minutes. And go ahead and read through those 3 areas. To make the activity a bit more actionable, every time that we meet, we'll give folks this hard copy and allow them some time to dissect the mission, vision, and the values and circle or highlight an area that they think speaks to them. For example, this coming Wednesday, we'll meet with our Encore Task Force. Those are representatives from each one of our Encore teams, our physical education, technical education, art, music, etc. They'll come together and we'll talk about how to move our curriculum forward. Before they begin that work, they'll do what you just did, and then we'll ask them to identify an area in the mission, vision, or values that they can ground themselves in so that when the work gets hard, they can keep coming back to that. Now, I didn't print anything out, and I'm not going to have an activity for the team, but today it was pretty specific when we were putting this material together last week that the work of Act 20 lives in many areas of our mission, vision, values, but most specifically in that area of collaboration. In order for this to work, we must work together to build relationships with one another and achieve success. So that's what we're focusing on when it comes to this work over the next few days, weeks, and throughout this year.
This represents the process that we are required to go through as a part of Act 20. So it starts with a universal screening where in the fall, winter, and spring, we are assessing students using Ames Web Plus as our universal screener. That is the statewide universal screener. Our 4K students we assess in fall and spring, and everyone else we do 3 times a year. When we start that process, from that start time until the 4th step in this process, we have 10 calendar days to get that done. So please keep that in mind as we're talking through this. So for example, starting on Wednesday, we will begin screening all of our kindergarten through 3rd grade students. So from that time frame, we have 10 days to complete this process. The second step, so once we screen students, if they fall below the 25th percentile, we are required to do some further diagnostic assessment, and that diagnostic assessment has to hit the remaining aspects of the law. There are 9 different components within the law, and between the screener and the diagnostic, we have to hit all of them with our assessment. We elected to use Ames Web Plus because other than one subtest, it's free. And so we are utilizing that. There are other assessments that have been approved by the state, but those range anywhere from $5 to $25 per student when you're administering those. So we chose to stick with Ames Web Plus so that we can take advantage of the fact that it's free for us to use with our students. So once the students who fall below the 25th percentile have been administered that first layer of diagnostic, if we need to do more, we have to get that component done before we develop that personal reading plan. And the personal reading plan we'll talk about a little bit more, but that is, as Melanie mentioned, a plan that we have to put in place. There are specific requirements that have to go into that plan, and that has to be put in place for every student who falls below the 25th percentile on the screener. So it's kind of a tight window. Keep in mind, I say calendar days too, because for whatever reason, they count Saturdays and Sundays. And so when we start this process, we have to try to be strategic in how we do that, knowing that we're losing 2 of the 10 days. So it's really about an 8-day process for us. And then the final component of the law is that our teachers are required weekly to monitor progress, and at the 10-week point, they have to report that progress formally to parents. And so that continues for any student that's on that plan. There we have some assessments that have to be administered as a part of that progress monitoring process. And so we've worked to try to set up that system to make sure we're hitting all of the components of the law. And then this is just to give you an idea. I won't go through everything, but the purple reflects the assessments that all students are required to take at those grade levels. And then the yellow represents the additional diagnostic assessments that we have to give at those grade levels. Our fourth grade, we include them on there, even though that's not part of the law, that fourth grade has to be administered that, but we want to monitor the progress of our fourth grade students as well. And so we are going to screen them. We have a little bit more flexibility, so we're going to screen them a little bit later in January now, so that we can get through the other testing. First grade, 2 of those that are in the yellow now, this represents our winter and spring assessments. 2 of those that are in the yellow now, actually in fall, are up in the purple. So they have 4 in the fall that are administered to everyone, and then 2 of those drop down to diagnostic in the winter and spring. The other thing I should mention is that at elementary level, it's important to keep in mind that right now our teachers are also with our new really great reading program, phonics program. There are program assessments that come into play for that as well, and so we are administering those in the fall, winter, and spring so that we can make sure we are seeing students make progress through that curriculum, and also evaluating whether or not what we're doing to instruct students in our phonics program is really working. And so our teachers will continue to do that. And as we look to adopt a math program, we're going to work to set up a very similar system with screening and then trying to get those diagnostic assessments in when we recognize through screening that students have a challenge. And so some of these similar components will come into play at that point, not required by law, but something that we're looking to do to make sure that we're catching the kids before they fall through the gaps.
Jen, bringing it back a little full circle, you had asked about summer school for mathematics before, and based on what we had just heard from Pam, in order for us to do that effectively, we must have a really clear way of identifying students that have those needs, being able to identify what those specific needs are, and then what the approach would be to support them. With our math adoption process, that is a big component of what we're talking about. So once we have that data, we'll be able to emulate what we do with Act 20 for our mathematics students. We're going to take this into practice a little bit. So I want you all to think like a first grade teacher. That's going to be important, right? You're hanging out with like 6- and 7-year-olds all day long, right? Doing great work. We have 7 first grade teachers here in the Two Rivers Public School District. Okay, we're going to use an example of one of them through this process. So you know what it entails. So here's the step number 1. Every single student, I have 18 students in your classroom, all right? In the fall, all 18 of those students are going to take 4 assessments. Those are known as screeners, okay? We screen everybody. That's the blood pressure check. Doesn't matter if you're healthy or not. When you go to the doctor, you're getting that blood pressure cuff put on your arm, right? That's the screener. It takes about 15 minutes per student. Now, these are individual assessments, right? So it's not as though a 15-minute assessment, we just give it to everybody and it's done, right? These are individual assessments. So in the fall, in the first grade, the total time needed to administer the assessment is about 4.5 hours. Now, in the winter and the spring, as Pam denoted, a couple of those assessments fall off. So now we only have 2 assessments, approximately 10 minutes per student. Again, these are individual, and so we only need about 3 hours in the winter and in that spring time frame. I want to note, right, we don't do this every day, right? We don't do this every week. It's not as though we take 4.5 hours, a couple of times a week to test students one-on-one. That would be bananas, right? So this is very, very new and a very new process, right? For us to be able to have that time and identify spaces that are secure and that allow students to have a very comfortable testing environment so that they can do the best that they can, right? And that's what we're looking to set up and support. All right, step 2 now. In step 2, out of those 18 students that we screened in our first grade classroom, we're going to say that 6 of them fell below the 25th percentile. So that means that we have 6 students that we've got to do a diagnostic assessment on. Okay, that's your blood draw, right? Well, we screened everybody, healthy or not. Now, we found some individuals that need a little bit more support. So we want to diagnose specifically what the need is. So in the first grade, there are 5 assessments to administer in the fall, 7 in the winter and the spring. Approximately 15 minutes per student, plus an additional 60 minutes for group administering tests. Now, there are some group administered opportunities for the diagnostic. So in the fall, we're looking at a total of about 2 hours and 15 minutes per classroom. And again, in the winter and spring, it's a little bit less, about 2 hours per classroom for me to do the diagnostic on those 6 students. Step 3. Now we have the data. All right, now we got to put a plan together. It's not enough just to pull a bunch of data. We got to figure out what we're going to do to help and support the students. So again, 6 different students that we had to do a diagnostic assessment for. That means that we have 6 students that will have a personalized reading plan. Must be written and disseminated to parents and guardians within 10 calendar days. That includes weekends. There are 8 sections to complete within the personalized reading plan for each student. And it's going to take approximately 30 to 45 minutes per student to complete this plan. So teacher sits down with a group of their colleagues. They have the data of the student. It's going to take between 30 and 45 minutes to complete one of these. So it requires collaboration between the teacher and any specialists that are working with the student to develop the plan and determine in-class intervention supports. And I think that last part's very important. We can put a plan on paper, and we can mail that plan out to parents, and we can get a signed plan back. But if we don't plan with our team as to what we're going to do in the classroom to improve on the reading capability of these students, that plan isn't worth the paper it's printed on. And so that's extra time. I'm that first grade teacher. I need input from the title teacher. I need input from the paraprofessional. I need input from the special education teacher. I need input from the multi-language teacher. I need input from all of the stakeholders to know how to best implement a plan so that student can be successful. Once that plan is written and sent out, we now have to progress monitor. In a couple of days, I get to go back to the doctor. I do that about every 6 months. I'm on a little pill that is supposedly made to drop my cholesterol. I don't know if it works or not, but if I go to the doctor every 6 months and I see my cholesterol creeping downward, that tells me that it's working. And that's the progress monitor, right? So they're checking up in this case, every week with these 6 students to ensure that the plan that we have written for those students is being successful. Now, again, we're in the first grade. So the progress monitoring tool that they're going to do is what's called an oral reading fluency assessment, affectionately known as the ORF. You're going to do that weekly to each student and document the progress. Here's how that works. Okay, Zach is the student. I'm the teacher. I got a reading passage, put it in front of Zach. I got that same reading passage in front of me. Zach starts reading. Every time he makes a mistake, I mark off one of the words. He gets 1 minute to read through the passage. I mark the end of the passage. Sounds simple, okay? But remember, we're doing this not with 40 and 50-year-olds. We're doing this with 6 and 7-year-olds, and we have to create a conducive and a highly effective learning environment for them to be able to do this distraction-free. We also must share the progress summary and any updates to the personalized reading plan with parents every 10 weeks until the student exits that plan. Parents have a right to know how their kids are doing. We don't want to put a plan in place and then never tell mom and dad how their child is doing on that very intensive plan. I'm going to keep talking, I guess. I get one more. All right. On November 5th, was it November 5th? Yeah. November 5th, so we have this ELA task force. Dana's been meeting with this task force since like 1987, and this ELA task force is absolutely sensational. I mean, they come up with the things we do well, the things we don't do well. They fix those things. They communicate really well. And one of the things we asked them is, how did it go after that fall screening assessment? Our teachers were great. Dana and the team was great. Pam was awesome. Chad was awesome. We didn't have to give the screener in the fall, but we did. We wanted to see what we were up against, right? We want to see how challenging it was. And so we did. We were relatively successful. The nice thing about the fall is we didn't have to worry about that 10-day window because it wasn't necessary. So we were able to stretch it out for a long period of time to see how that was going to work. But here's some of the feedback that we got. We asked teachers, what do you need? What do you need to make this successful going forward? So to provide support and guidance for how to prioritize the components of English language arts to get everything that is needed in. That means core instruction, assessment, and intervention for our students. Ensure, which is bolded and underlined, ensure there is classroom support throughout the process. So if I'm working one-on-one with that student, doing one of these diagnostic assessments, am I able to do that in a space that is conducive for them to give me a good read while I have support in my classroom with my other 17 students? Stay transparent and open throughout the process. And then finally, probably most importantly, we need to continually remind our staff how awesome they are. We probably don't do it enough, but they are really awesome. So those are the things they gave us as feedback.
I'm going to pause right there and just do a process check for you. Because that was a lot of information given by both Pam and Kyle. And this is just the tip of the iceberg right now because we're about to embark on this. So I want you to take a look at the dates that are here between January 8th and February 5th. And with that, I say that with great care and great gratitude for our teachers and for the staff that are here tonight and for all those that are supporting us, because this is a lot in 1 month's time. And it is with a lot of effort between the people behind me and Diane and you guys that we really support our teachers because they are about to go on a journey they've never been on before. So when we look at this, we had to actually wrap our minds around it today when we were looking at all the dates and making sure everything was supported with care and that they felt they had enough resources to do this work. So we're going to truly support them throughout this process through February 5th when we end with the ELA task force that then will review the process. And mind you, we will do this again in spring. And it will look just like this. So I'm going to let you pause and just think about that for a moment. And not that we didn't consider all options as we went into winter testing, because again, reminder, fall was not necessary. We wanted to learn. But that we did look at a lot of options. Like what can we do with the least amount of disruption to the learning environment and have the most consistent universal curriculum still happening while having to do this. And we know that this is going to provide great information for our kids, and we know that this is going to provide interventions that are needed. So we looked at a lot of options, and we looked at option 1, which is currently what we're going through. And we felt this was the most conducive to keeping a consistent learning environment. Option 2 would have carried this work from December 2nd all the way to January 28th. And we thought with the support staff that we have, Title I, that helps to do this in special education, they would never have time to teach. And would never have time to provide that intervention that is so needed. Option 3, if you look at it, also requires K-12 encore teachers, which is what Kyle just alluded to that I'll be meeting with him and Tim Eng on Wednesday, would disrupt the entire district to help support the efforts because we need all of the folks to help us do this and to have everybody readily available. And again, this is just winter. So we would have to repeat this process again. So I just put that up there for you that we have considered everything that we know to consider at this point in time, given the information that we have. So going forward in 25-26, we've been already planning, as you know. January turns the corner, you start to think of fall and already next school year. And what can we do to provide the best environment? And I go back to this, which is what the feedback from teachers, and ensure that the classroom support is happening throughout the process. So with that, our focus for 25-26, is this mine? Okay, I thought so. Would be Act 20. We again have to train teachers. So that's not even a part of what we just went through. Currently, the administrative staff is going through literacy training. Those are 6 day-long components that are done by CISA 6. That will be then on teachers for next year. So they want us to have the basis, which is rightfully so, and then they will go through that. We will have to retrain our special education teachers on the IEP process because Act 20 is going to require them to write IEPs a little differently with more specific accommodations around those screeners and diagnostics. We're also going to have the implementation of the new math curriculum, hopefully. And then continue growth of our ELA because we know that at that time, RGR will be in year 2. We know, and you'll go through this with Chad in just a minute, but the cycle of our curriculum will just be another year further, and we want to continue to support our teachers in that process. We'll have regular ELA and math data to review a few times a month, and we still have that district-wide strategic plan that we're going to support with our school-wide action plans, aside from Ames Web plus assessment training. I like to pause because it makes me think and it helps me to process. And I want you to be able to do the same.
All right, 3 of them went. I'm number 4, so we're getting closer to the end here. So this is the requirements for our professional staff. Dana touched on this a little bit. Teachers will be receiving some training in May for 4 hours. 8 hours of summer training this coming summer for our teachers. And then Wednesdays, 1 Wednesday per month next fall for the duration of the school year to continue that training. And then the following summer, they would have 7 hours of training. So this is training that's just put on teachers that needs to be in place as a requirement for Act 20. It does need to be facilitated by a DPI-approved trainer. So we are working with CISA 6. They are doing our trainings for our administrators right now, our coaches, and our reading specialists. And right now, that's 6 days of training that we are going through this current school year. We have another one this coming Thursday where we'll be getting trained as administrative staff. So DPI-approved trainer, we're working with CISA 6 as our vendor for the trainings for that. So that's a little bit that teachers have coming up. We talked a little bit about math, and there's been some questions, and Jen, you were kind of asking about summer school and some math questions, so we want to get some of this out there in front of you also. We do have a math task force that's in place right now that is looking for our math curriculum for next school year. We are currently with Math Expressions, and our contract with them is up, so Math Expressions is one of the vendors that we're considering going with for our new math curriculum. But we have to make a decision. So that contract is up. You can renew with them, or you can go with another vendor for our math curriculum. So a little bit about that math journey and kind of how it is going to require some of the same time that we're looking at as far as Act 20 and ELA. We'll be looking at this spring and summer. We'll be working on leadership training. So we'll be working on training our staff on that new math curriculum. And then really that initial training, so whether we stay with Math Expressions or go with a new vendor, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that needs to take place. You don't just pick up a book and walk in the door and 5 minutes later you start teaching it. There's a lot of training that goes on. We're going to need some PD days next school year for our new math curriculum. So we're envisioning that probably quarterly, one of those PD days will be for math. So taking our PILC days, which is our Wednesdays, using those for some of those deep dive workshops. So there's just a lot of things that need to take place next year for math. So using our quarterly PD days and some of those Wednesdays are going to be important. And coupling that with moving forward with ELA. So this would be a snapshot next school year. We would be in our 2nd year of our Really Great Reading. That's our phonics component that works with Wit and Wisdom. Would be in our 3rd year of Geodes and Volume of Reading. That's your small group instruction piece. We'd be in year 4 of Wit and Wisdom. That's our core instruction. And then having conversations around strengthening those small group interventions. As Kyle was talking initially about the process, that intervention piece is important. We have to find ways to support those students who have identified needs because we're going to be monitoring them weekly. And our plan is to get them to exit their personalized reading plan and move forward from there. and then also working on word study in grades 3 and 4. So a lot of what we're talking about is current reality of programming that we have, coupling that with mathematics, shot in the arm for our math program, and then moving forward with Act 20 and all the components that are in place for that. So Wednesdays, just kind of a sketch of what we think we can make next year look like for our Wednesdays. One Wednesday a month would be on ELA data. So taking some of those assessment pieces, taking the data, meeting with our teams, talking about next steps. Same thing for math, taking a look at our math data, getting together with our teams, what's going well, what's not going well, how can we support it, what do we need to do differently. Act 20 training, I talked a little bit about that. We'll need a lot of Wednesdays for that. Some of those are an hour and a half or an hour-long trainings. Those are required by the state of all teachers in the state of Wisconsin. And then obviously math implementation needs. So we're going to have some needs that are going to pop up with this new math curriculum that we're moving forward with. We're going to need some time for that.
So I know Dana's, we talked about favorite words today. Dana's favorite word is fiduciary. Mine is confluence. I love the word confluence. So if you're at McDonald's and you take a look outside, you can see the confluence in Two Rivers, right? That's where the East Twin and the West Twin meet one another. And it's just kind of the symbolic area and the symbolic point of any waterway, right? Because then they rush out into one of the greatest lakes in the world, right? And while a confluence can be a very peaceful and a very fulfilling place, it can also be a pretty tumultuous place. When the lake is rocking, I can tell you, because I've been there before, when you're on that lake and you come into that confluence, it's pretty busy, right? You better hold on. And that's kind of what we got ahead of us. Act 20 and our math adoption are kind of two locomotives that are coming. And it's to no one's fault. I think it's a great thing. Great things are going to happen from it, but it's a lot of work. Our school action plans are what we're trying to use to help guide us through the process. Now, our school action plans have both an academic and a character side, and we're going to continue to do these. In fact, we were at McGee this evening, Diane and I, working with McGee's team on their action plans and their building goals. Our action plans, just a reminder, they're wrapped up in our strategic plan. So every guiding coalition, every team works through an action plan that aligns to the strategic plan. And the one thing I was thinking about as I was standing back there is this work that our elementary teams are doing really aligns very, very directly today to our focus on learning goal, right? We want to take kids with an ELA proficiency from here to here, right? We want to raise how well they're doing, but also empowering staff. And if I read that over there and see the front half, I'm getting old, can't see the back half, it says, give staff the tools, resources, and support. Tools, resources, and support that they need in order to do great work with kids. We've never seen a time like this in education. We're trying to think out of the box. We had the 3 options up there on how we were going to assess students. We came up with the 4th option was the one that we did. So we're trying to think differently in the way we can support our staff so they can be best for kids. And when we have our teams come together, whether it be our guiding coalitions or our task forces or strategic planning teams, those of you that were there, this is a document that we use, we always run them through the sustainable change process. The conditions for successful implementations, there's 5 of them. You have to have a vision, you got to have the skills, there have to be incentives, you have to provide resources, and you have to have a plan. If you have those 5 things, you're going to find sustainable change, whether it be a math implementation or Act 20. Today, we talked at the beginning about collaboration being the key to this work. Well, the other key that I would say is our ability to provide our staff with the requisite resources that they will need to be successful. And in a school district, you have 3 resources. You have people, you have money, and you have time. And they are all finite. So how do you best utilize those 3 resources to do the best thing you can for kids. I think we're going to have to think a little bit outside the box. It's always a little bit scary, but I think we can get that work done. So it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. I get it. Questions do you have for us?
Did the state provide any guidance, or they said, here you go, good luck?
Yeah, so kind of like shooting in the middle there, Tim. They have. I'll tell you, Barb Novak from the DPI. I doubt Barb is watching this board meeting, but if she were, I think this. She's doing a phenomenal job. The DPI is really trying to do their best in navigating legislation, right? And it wasn't perfect legislation. I don't think any legislation is. I think the heart of this, though, is right. We want students to achieve better, and we want to put a multi-tiered support system in for kids. Well, I can't argue with that. Can I argue with the rollout a little bit? Sure. Tim, perfect example, the personalized reading plan, okay? 8 sections. It's big, right? The state came out with an example, a sample. Here, take this. They gave us an editable version. We could change it around, right? So they gave us a starting point on a lot of this stuff. We've worked very intentionally with Infinite Campus. I just was working with them about an hour ago to try to import that personalized reading plan into IC, so it's just not a piece of paper out in the wilderness, So yeah, they've provided some guidance. There's a little bit of money locked up. We've done all the printing. I bet you, the other day I brought a bag of binders in that Pam had built. And Pam said she carried both these bags in. I think she's a liar. Because I carried one of them in, and I think I pulled my pectoral muscle. I mean, it had to weigh 100 pounds. And kid you not, Pam is putting all of these binders together, every single piece of paper. And Patty Mino is doing all the printing. I mean, they're just rock stars. So there's a lot that we're lifting on our own on this. So hopefully that'll become a little bit more streamlined down the way. So.
I know we don't have numbers in front of you, but do you have any type of forecast of how many students you're thinking below the 25 percentile?
Do we remember from last? I know we had our numbers. It's really hard because it's a bit apples to oranges, I'll be honest with you. For example, the things we are asking our kinders to do in the fall is kind of mind-blowing, because there's a lot of that information that they hadn't received, and frankly, some of them never went to school before. We don't have to go to 4K, right? So a lot of the students, that's their first time ever in a schoolhouse. So I guess, unfortunately, Randy, I'd hate to give a number right now because it'd be too far of a speculation. I will say, when we put the presentation together, I had that first grade classroom, and I said 6 students on a PRP. That's not out of the question. So if you're looking at that's 33%.
I wasn't really asking to put you on the spot or anything or tie you to a specific number. I was just hoping that we did some type of forecast as to best plan or worst case scenario or something to that effect. So
yeah, we have put together our support plan for our teachers when they start assessing with worst case scenario in mind. We are screening this week. I think I am a first grade teacher for a while on Wednesday over at Koenig. We've kind of gotten all hands on deck that we could so that our teachers can have a very conducive testing environment. And then this Friday, when they do their diagnostic work, we've got some supports in place too.
So we just looked up to about 60 students per building. And keep in mind, kindergarten in fall did not have those experiences, so your numbers in kindergarten are going to be higher because they haven't had enough exposure to the universal. So it's about 60.
I can give you some pretty exact numbers because not only is this happening in the traditional school, it's also happening in the charter school. So now take all of those pieces and add on top of it technology. Technology that works sometimes and doesn't work sometimes. Kids who have never been on technology versus some kids who have been on technology. So we started screening kids in December because we're doing one grade level per week. So we started with first grade because we thought they would have some, it was a little bit shorter and it would be a little easier than kindergarten. So in first grade, out of those 15 kids, we had 4 of them who were below the 25th percentile. This last week we did kindergarten, and it was very challenging. So we had students who I am sure did not understand the directions. So in kindergarten, it's all about letters and letter sounds. That's basically where their percentile comes in. And if the parent left the room, I was trying to give directions online, right, to kindergartners. I'm like, hey, start up there with that letter A. What are those letters? And I had one little one that waited, and you only get 1 minute. So she waited about 20 seconds, and then she went B, C, D. So she was just doing her alphabet. I'm like, well, that's great. That didn't help so much. So walking away from that assessment, I don't know how many kids actually know their letters or letter sounds because the online portion was very challenging. But now Tanya has, so we had 4 of us doing the screenings. Now Tanya has 8 kindergartners and 4 first graders for sure that are going to need reading plans. And we haven't done second and third grade yet. How are we going to do it? How is she going to do all of that? This is what we are continuing to brainstorm, how we're going to manage it.
And not only how is she going to do it, where will we find the time to allow for Tanya to plan with the people around to make sure that she can do it?
And what people are there to plan with at the charter school. So those are definite challenges. Kyle mentioned before that we're trying to think outside the box. So you're going to notice in your executive content 4 paragraphs and a sample calendar. We were going to bring that sample calendar to you tonight. And after meeting with Jen on Thursday, we decided maybe we need to provide more information about the requirements of Act 20 and what that means for time for our teachers. What I would ask you to do is read those paragraphs and then take a look at that draft calendar. That's one idea of what we can do to support our teachers. If you feel like that is just undoable or not reasonable, please get in contact with me before the next board meeting. Because at the next board meeting, what we would be doing is bringing that forward for a first reading, bringing the calendar forward for a first reading, and then with the second, the first meeting in February for approval.
Something I should
snickering about?
probably, well, I should probably have said this. We also are learning how to administer this assessment with students who are nonverbal. So that too came with some suggestions on research-based assessments. We ordered those. Those came into our hands last week, Thursday and Friday. The staff is looking over those materials on Wednesday, and they are administering by next week, Wednesday. So be it that this is something we also have to consider is how to get information from students who are nonverbal. So just an added component that I should have probably said on slide 52. No, I don't know what slide, but that slide. So just know out there that that is something we're also tackling.
Can I ask a question right now about the calendar? And I know this is a draft, and that's fine, not holding you guys to anything, but why did you choose the days you chose? Dartboard?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a reason.
Coin flip. So they do need to match up to the timelines for Act 20. So in the proposal, those dates would fall when we're looking at PRP writing, personalized reading plans. So they give us a window within the first 45 days of school. We got to be wrapped up So you take the first day of school, and I think that's the same deal. They count Saturdays and Sundays. So we got to be wrapped up 45 days in, 45 days from the end of the school year. You got to be done before that, and then they give you kind of a winter. So that's where we came up with it, and then we tried to take dates and match them up the best we could on the calendar to be, tied to a weekend or something like that. So we weren't just going to take a day and drop it in the middle of the week type of thing. So that's kind of how they came to be. So you take that 10-day window that we talked about, and you just kind of lay that 10-day window out. Where can we put the assessment, the screening, diagnostic, PRP writing, communicating with families, and then hitting the ground running with the plan after that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nonverbal and non-English native speakers also, right? Got that too?
Yep, Kyle can give you a little bit of ML.
Yeah, so if we have a newcomer student, we have the opportunity to exempt that student from one testing window. So, yep. So if, let's say they were to come to us in December and we're supporting and giving them the needs, or the resources that they need, we can exempt them from the winter window, not the spring window though. So you can imagine that it'd be a challenge to assess them at that point.
It's interesting, one of the kids we had with the charter, one of them, the kids that I screened was an ML student. And you have to listen differently. So the student was using, instead of the word the, was using duh, right? Duh, duh. And I started marking it off. They have 1 minute. And then as you start listening, you're like, oh, that's the word the. It's just the way he's pronouncing it. So you go back and you give him credit for all those. But, I mean, those are the kind of those little things you have to listen for, especially if you're not in a classroom with them all the time and understand, how that student may speak.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this, because this is exactly what I think we needed to really make it come to life. Because Act 20, Act 20, Act 20, everyone's talking about it, but I just listen, and the more I learn, the more I don't know how the teachers do it. I just don't.
Well, and here's an example coming up this week. We're screening and we're diagnosing. So Kyle mentioned it. He's got grade 1. I mean, the 4 of us are taking on classrooms at different times. We're pulling every single person we can. And we can do that. I mean, we can do that once in a while. But we're looking at how do we sustain this? This is something, as long as the legislation's in place, this is something we're going to have to figure out long-term. 3 windows during every school year. How do we staff that, and how do we make it so that we can keep sanity in place for our teachers? So we have to support them, give them space and time to do what they need to do, and we have to figure out how we can do that with the people we
This
have.
would be such a learning. Keep a real detailed notebook. And with the math and Infinite Campus, there's such big bites that the staff and admin has taken on in the last 2 years. 3 years. It's amazing. So we appreciate it. And Kyle said good things will come out of it.
Kyle, have you reached out to other schools to see what they're doing? Any
If
suggestions or?
Money was, I thought Randy was going to ask that question because that's usually his go-to, but that's a good one. Yes, I have. So I have a curriculum directors
I
network.
just change it up every once in a while.
The schools within CISA 7 have been amazing. I was talking with Dylan at Southern Door today about we were having some issues with one of the services, and so it's a really nice connection that we have with all the schools in CISA 7. So Southern Door, Denmark, Luxembourg, Casco have been fantastic to work with, and some of the things that you're seeing up here are a product of us having conversations with them, and vice versa. We actually, Gary, earlier we spoke about the leadership training. We spoke about the fact that we as leaders need to be trained, and there are 6 dates throughout this school year that we spend a full day learning about the science of reading. The next one's on this Thursday. We actually partnered with Mishicot. So Mishicot comes here, and they have about 4 or 5 staff members, principals, and directors and title teachers that come here, and we actually work together as a crew. And then, during the breaks, you're chit-chatting about what's your PRP look like, and when are you screening, and how are you supporting. So that's been a nice conversation piece as well. So yeah, there's a lot of folks that are saying, hey, if we get something and we're building something great, we'll share it with you, and vice versa.
Also, just a caveat, was it Plymouth? Plymouth School District was here by us last week. So that was nice to be able to have, they came for classroom observations around Wit and Wisdom and RGR and GEODS. So they were at Koenig, and to be able to have that conversation in person was wonderful too, and how they were implementing it. So people are reaching out to each other a lot more, I would say, in this last year, since the science of reading and all the things are coming. And being transparent about it, right? We need help. We need each other's, because a lot of times we'll share kids anyway. So it's been awesome to see that camaraderie and connection. So.
Anything else for the good of the crew?
No, this was really helpful.
Okay.
Really helpful, so thank you.
Please reach out. You sit on it for a while, you get some thoughts, you want to reach back out, let you know. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Oh, I'm still blown away by Act 20. Gosh. I just, we'll get through it. And it's one thing that I find interesting. There's so much that we keep track of, and Act 20 was one of many things. It's so important. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to the auditor's report. That's another important thing.
Yes, it is. That's for sure. All school districts in Wisconsin, as you know, are required to have an annual audit. And what that is it's an independent third-party accountants that are coming into our office, and they do an independent and kind of a deep dive review of our financial records. So our annual audit usually begins with a day in June, where they spend a day with us, and then they come back in July for 2 days. It's a really busy time because we have to submit a lot of information. Basically, a lot of the key points of what happened over the past year needs to be sent to them, which the majority of that information is all sent electronically. So for the 23-24 school year, our auditors were here, like I said, a day in June, and then July 10th and 11th, which means we had until the 8th to send them all of information. That's not a lot of time, especially with the July 4th holiday in there. Everything, again, went very well. The audit reports that are at your places this evening include the bound book, which is all the financial information, as well as the management advisory comments. It's the one that they have titled Independent Auditor's Report on Communication with those charged with governance and management advisory comments. In the middle section of the management advisory comments, what they have labeled Appendix A, are the journal entries that have been done as part of the audit. There's a little over 7 pages worth. Now, those were actually adjustments that we gave to the auditors after July 8th, when we sent them all of our information, because there was additional invoices or additional revenue that came in. There is no way we can get everything all done and tied up by the 8th of July. There's just a lot more information that comes in the door. That's why there are so numerous. They did give us, though, 2 journal entries this year, 2 changes that they had requested us to make. I can't ever forget to send out a big thank you to the awesome team that I work with. Debbie Wire in payroll, Lana Linsmeyer, who works with employee benefits, and Nia Chuli, who works with accounts payable. They complete a lot of the work very accurately and very efficiently so that we can wrap up and get this audit and all these numbers to our auditors by July 8th. We are actually one of the first audits that Hawkins Ash CPA does during the summer. When they were here in our office, I asked them what their schedule looked like, and they said they were pretty much booked every week from beginning of July through the end of August. So I'm glad that we're on the front end of it. At least we can get them, as we say in our office, get them in and get them out. Something different that we're going to do a little bit this year compared to in the past is that at the next board meeting on January 27th, we are going to have our lead auditor, Jared Lensmeyer. He is going to actually give a presentation, and he's going to talk about some of the highlights of the audit and kind of take a high-level approach to it and give you some of the takeaways of the process, focusing a lot on the financial aspect as well as the management advisory comments. But if you have any questions now, please let me know, or between now and then. But like I said, he will be here on the 27th.
Thank you. All right, next up is some donations. And wow. We have a lot tonight. We have an anonymous donation of $630 for ELA Really Great Reading Kits. We have an anonymous donation of $125 to the Angel Fund. $300 to the Angel Fund from Pat, Lois, Sean, Ryan, and Hannah Stapleton. An anonymous donation of $100 designated to Where It Is Needed Most. $128 from the Ladies of St. Peter the Fisherman to the Angel Fund. And I love that amount because it reminds me that comes from their card games, doesn't it? $400 from Frank and Christine Boutnick to the Angel Fund. $100 from AWSA, Association of Wisconsin School Administrators, to Koenig Elementary in memory of Jacob Bear. A used MacBook Pro from Jean LeClaire to be used for educational purposes. And finally, an anonymous donation of a 10-pound ham and 2 winter coats for a family in need. So, wow. Kind of speechless on that, but any more on those, Diane? Any details?
Well, of course, it's amazing, right? And you think about, like, from a smaller thing like a 10-pound ham, but how important and how much it is appreciated by families, right? A winter coat on today when your eyes are freezing closed when you're walking across the parking lot. So thank you to all the people in the community that continuously think about our district.
So with that, I look for a motion to accept the donations that we brought up tonight.
I'll make a motion to accept all the donations that were presented.
All right, all in favor of accepting the generous donations we read off tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to all. Thank you to the anonymous out there too. All right, nothing else under new business. We are coming to the end. We've got administrator updates. Chad will come back with the McGee report card.
All right. (2023-24) report card presentation. Here we go. So we did share these out with our staff early part of November, I think. Right before the public release. So I'll go through it. I did take out some slides. There were some district slides and stuff. I think Kyle did an introduction a while ago of those. So, all right. 3-year. So the bottom would be the oldest, and then the top is the newest. This year's score was a 63.4 overall, meets expectations. One thing that you'll notice on the right side, that priority area weights, we're going to talk quite a bit about that and how it impacts the report card. So if you look back to 21-22, there was only 3 slices of pie, and if Kyle Cornick was at the table, he'd take the blue one on the right because it's half the pie, and then the rest of us, we get those quarter pieces. But as you look up at the top too, it's broken down into 4 quadrants. There's a target growth group that's in there. That's the green area, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So overall, some nice climbs. We do know that there was some changes in the assessment this year, so they do caution you to say you should not put too much merit in comparing this year's scores to last year's scores, because the test was cut a little bit differently this year. But we did see some nice gains, as we'll look at in the next few slides. Talked a little bit about that pie. Target group outcomes. It's outcome for students with the lowest test score in their school. Target group outcomes are displayed for achievement, growth, chronic absenteeism, attendance, and graduation. That's big. That shows up in a lot of places. That's a mathematical piece that gets used in a lot of different places in a report card. Kyle's talked about this a lot. Attendance and graduation data lags 1 year, so we looked at our attendance data across the district from the close of last school year, and it looked really good. Just going to take us a little bit of time for that to get in the school report card and start maybe moving out some of those old years. So graduation attendance does lag a little bit. This was just something I shared with my staff. Achievement and growth priority areas of the report card are weighted based on the percentage of economically disadvantaged students within a school or a district. Some schools and districts have these priorities weighted differently than others, reflecting each district's student population. And growth scores are calculated by reviewing the change in a student's actual test score and comparing their results to average growth for similar students across the state. For example, if a student has a higher test score increase from the previous year as compared with similar students, you're going to see that growth go up. So just some kind of housekeeping on some of the terminology. We looked at some highlights. We do have a 3-year upward trend in overall score, which is good. Our elementary report cards are always a little bit finicky because our sample sizes are pretty small. It's grades 3 and 4. So, you know, you can have some fluctuation just based on the populations of students, number of students. Even if you have a smaller grade coming through, that's that many less students taking the test. We did have all four priority scores went up. ELA and math performance have an upward trend over the last 3 years. And our percentage of advanced in meeting, which are the top 2 categories, is above the state. We were at 53.8 and 52% was the state. And the student group value add is closing the gap. Some areas that we want to take a look at, focusing in on target groups, specifically on achievement. So flat out, how are they performing? So taking a look at those students in those target groups, identifying them, and then making sure that they're on our radars when we're planning for instruction. We're taking a look at some assessments. We're looking at interventions. All those things come into play. How can we support those students along with all students on moving that achievement up? Attendance matters. Are we doing all we can with asset-based language to support students attending? I think at the elementary, that's monumental. If we're doing a great job of getting students in the door, wanting them to be there, that helps our middle school and our high school as those students progress through. When we see attendance issues at the elementary age, that's a red flag. If they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old and we're having a hard time getting them to school, it's going to take a lot of heavy lifting to get them to be a 14, 16, 18-year-old coming to school every day. So that attendance piece, you know, we talk a lot about the asset-based language in our business at the elementary. It's going to be probably 1 in 1,000 that you can say it's the student's fault for being late to school that day. 999 out of 1,000 is going to be an adult's behavior. That's why they're not in school that day. Whether, you know, they didn't get up, they didn't get them to school, whatever excuse you can think of that comes out, it's a lot of adult behavior at the elementary. So how are we supporting our students coming through the door, and how are we working with families? And then another area that we want to be mindful of, and this is really going to be impacted with our math work that we're doing, is being mindful of universal curriculum and are all students taking the forward, getting access to it. So we have to make sure all of our students in all of our classrooms across our buildings are receiving the same universal curriculum. So when we're taking the forward test, we can ensure that they've all had access to that material. That really comes down to making sure we have students in class getting what they need. The exclusion would be students that take the DLM. So that's students who take an alternative assessment. But making sure all of our students are getting access to what they need. The last slide that I have in here, and this is in your packet, this is just 6 links that you can take a look at. The first one gets to all report cards on DPI, talking about how you can communicate with your community. Some resources, what's new, so some of those changes are highlighted in there. That report card at a glance is a really good piece if you want to just try to understand all the components. This is year 24 and a half for me in the district, and I don't know that I can say 100% with certainty that I understand every single thing every single time when I look at those school report cards. I end up finding myself having to look at some of these resources to get through what you need to get through. So, any questions? A lot of what we talked about before feeds into the outcomes of your school report card. So strong universal curriculum, our ELA processes, interventions is helping our students that need the most help. Strong math curriculum, they all seem to make sense. They should flow together and help us continue to move forward. So
You have a nice little trend going.
Yep.
I think I asked Tim Eng this last time, but do you have anything you can kind of attribute, like some of your upward trends?
Yeah, I mean,
Any feeling you have?
it's difficult from year to year because, you know, we've had fluctuation in grade levels by 25 students. You know, I've had almost 90 students in a grade level, and I've got some grade levels that are like 45 right now. So numbers matter. I truly think a lot of it has to do with the grade level teachers that we have and working with our students. You know, we've tried some different things with test schedules. We used to do every single section of the test, we would do it on a different day. They would have, you know, 13 sections that they would take as a fourth grader. We've gone to just flat testing days. So we have 3 days that our fourth graders take the tests. They come in, we do a hot breakfast for all of our students outside of what's already taken place. It's a separate breakfast, kind of make it a test day. We take a test, we take an extra long recess, we play some games, we come back, we get ready, we take another big section of that test. So I've been happy with our testing format that we've used. I mean, how do you quantitatively say that's exactly what's causing, you know, some better results? We've learned some lessons over the years. Adult attitude matters. You know, the adults that are supporting our students need to be supporting them and believe in the process. Statewide testing is not exactly probably high on anyone's favorite fourth grade memory when they leave Koenig and McGee, like, oh, that was so great, I love statewide testing. But what are the adults doing? You know, there's a lot that we can do to help the process. You got to do the best you can on that day and build those kids up. So, and I'm confident in our curriculum process. I just feel like we've done a lot of great things. We have to start seeing some results. I think math is going to probably lend itself to that. But specifically, can you pinpoint it? They're humans. That's the hard part. You know, you're dealing with humans. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All righty. Thank you.
All right, followed by Albie Clark.
Hi, everybody. So Chad kind of did the explanation part, so we can zoom through some of the explanation a little bit in our slides. But before we start, so last year when we stood here, it was not a real good time. It was a pretty rough year for both the report card and just I think the words that I used were a perfect storm of a lot of things came together that year, not in a good way. I'm happy to be here tonight to say that we made a huge jump forward this past year due to a lot of different things that we'll go through as we move through the presentation here. You know, 3 years ago we were at a 53. We almost made it back in 1 year from the dip that we took. That 2023 year was 22-23 year was. Just to refresh memories a little bit, not that we want to, that was one of our worst attendance years that we had coming back out of COVID. We had some staffing struggles some significant staffing issues that year, some different things that really made that year difficult. So, you know, the plans that we talked about going into this year and the things that we were going to do are the things that we've been working on. And I am confident that this year we can say that we're even more focused in those things. So, you know, good things moving forward, but we had a 9.5 point increase this past year. which is what we wanted to see, and we'll continue to work forward to keep that moving.
So these are just some of the highlights from our report card. So all this information from the report card had been went through, and a lot of this information has been shared with our staff already when we had a staff meeting back on like November 19th. I believe that was just to go through and kind of like highlight some of our successes from this past year on our report card. And as Tim had mentioned, we had that 9.5 increase in our overall report card grade. And when we had met with CISA 7 just to go over some of our like the district-wide report card pieces, that was one of the things that they had talked about was, I think it was a 3-point jump. So like across the state, when schools improve on average, it's about a 3-point increase. So a 9.5 increase is a pretty big jump. And obviously in a really good direction from where we had been going. Our school-wide attendance rate increased from 89.4%, like Tim had mentioned, all the way up to 91.7. So because it lags a year, that 91.7, this was the first year that we could have that on there, and we already know for this upcoming year. Last year we finished at 93.3%, and we're currently sitting at 93.8, 93.9%, and we're about 0.6 ahead of where we were last year. So we've seen a very steady increase in our overall attendance, and then with that overall attendance piece too, our chronic absenteeism rate, which I think in my eyes, attendance is one of the biggest things that hits us on the report card, because it comes up in so many different areas when we talk about your target group outcomes, your overall school, and then like your on track to graduation piece too. It really hits in a lot of different areas, which is why it's a really huge focus for us. And obviously, if they're in school, they're learning a lot more. So it's been awesome to see that continuously has been improving. 14.2 increase in growth priority area of the report card. So we had a huge jump in ELA, and then we had a similar jump, not quite as big, but we had another jump in math as well, going in the right direction. And like I said, we're going to go a little bit more in depth with these as well.
Just clicking back at, if you look at the pie for us, our pie looks a little bit more similar to Koenig's than it does McGee's, because we have that higher rate of economically disadvantaged students at Clark. So you'll see that the growth section of our report card is bigger than the achievement piece due to that.
And then 15.4 increase in the priority area for our target group outcomes again. So that's that your bottom 25% scoring students across your building, and that can be any students. That's just your bottom 25%. So to see a 15.4 point increase in that area was a really good jump in the right direction. I guess as we get into this too, just in case I forget, as we met with CISA 7, some different things had come up, because when we were going through the data, I was really, really curious as far as like chronic absenteeism, and why that was so weird, because I said, like, we're going in a really great direction right now. Our chronic absenteeism, the score should be going in a good direction, but they said that that's actually a 3-year weighted average for chronic absenteeism, and it lags a year. So that's like, if I could write it out on the board, it'd still be difficult to understand, because it took me a long time to go through and kind of really like figure it out. But as our worst year got added for chronic absenteeism, that being 4 years ago now, as that got added on, some of our really good years before that dropped off, which is why in 2 years or 1 year, I can't remember which one it is, that like worst year on our overall attendance and our chronic absenteeism rate, that's finally going to drop off that 3-year weighted average, and then we're going to see a really big increase in that area.
The next couple of slides that you'll see are just some graphic representations of what is in this slide. So the next slide is the third and fourth bullet about the ELA and math growth. So if you take a look, the top one is English language arts and math from 22-23, and then the bottom one is this past year. You can see the jump from ELA from 24.2 for our growth score to 47 last year, and for math from 45 to 50.8.
And then this next slide here is when you really like dive down into it and you look at the different demographic areas. So this is on a 6-point scale, and so again, this is all based off of student growth. 3 is what is considered average student growth, so you really want to be as close to that line. Perfect scenario, you have everybody as close to 6 as you possibly can. So you can see on that left side, 22, 23, where all of our numbers are for ELA. And then going to the following year, we're not above. We don't have any of the subgroups that are above that 3.0 yet, but you can see in every single one of those areas we had a really nice jump that got us a lot closer to that. And as we continue along, we'll be seeing those above that and exceeding what is considered typical growth for these areas.
Well, one to point out in particular, I gotta put my glasses on so I can read it, but English language learners, I think this is the right here. You can see it went from 0.6 to 2.6. That was the one that increased the most, and that's due to, you know, the investments that you've made in hiring more staff and giving our people the ability to do what we need to do for kids that have multi-language needs, and the work that Kyle's done with that team. So, you know, you're seeing immediate results almost from that sort of thing.
With this too, a couple of the different demographic areas, you'll see that there's not a score. It's because the subgroup, there wasn't enough students enrolled in that. I think the number, you need to have at least 20 students in that subgroup area. So like the Black or African American students, we don't have that many because a lot of students will identify as being a student of 2 or more races.
This, I flipped it. You might not notice a difference, but this is the math slide for the growth with subgroups. There was growth in every single subgroup. Again, just not quite as pronounced in the English language arts area. You want me to take this one?
So this is when we get into talking about like our target group outcomes. And again, there's a handful of different things that fall into this, but as we had mentioned before, and like some of our highlight pieces there, we saw a really nice increase for both of these as well. So in fact, from jumping from the left side there, 22 and 23, to our right side, like as far as growth for our target group exceeded the growth of our non-target group, which is, so we had all these students that are growing and doing awesome, but our kind of like bottom 25% have grown so much that they're actually growing, or in this school year grew more than the non-target group. So really kind of like it's all like leveling out with those students. And then within mathematics, they had the same growth score at 50.8. So in both of those areas, again, and kind of similar to what you had seen on the previous slides there, we saw a much bigger jump in ELA. And an increase in math, but not as big of a jump for that.
All right, and now on to our areas for growth, because like I said when we started, we took a nice step forward. This is by no means where we want to be at the end of the game, so we've got a lot of work to do still. One of the obvious things, and again, we'll have some graphic representations that just kind of will show what's on this slide. Our 8th grade math achievement score, which is one of the big indicators that the middle level gets scored on twice actually on the report card. We still lag behind the state average. We need to continue to increase our rate of growth so we can see increases in achievement there. Although, when you get to the third bullet there, continuing the progress that we've made raising growth for all students and subgroups in both content areas. Like we've started growth. Before you're going to see increases in achievement, you're going to see increases in growth. We've got to continue to supercharge that growth so that we can get the achievement scores to start moving too. Then our target group students do have very low achievement scores compared to the non-target group. Again, that lowest 25%, and we need to continue our efforts to accelerate their growth, especially even more, so that we can close achievement gaps that we have for different demographic groups. Some of them are listed in that last slide there. Students with disabilities, English language learners, and students of 2 or more races. So these are our achievement scores. It is difficult, like Chad talked about, you can't compare scores from this past year to prior years because they changed the way that they scored the report cards. So we are comparing what we can. So looking from the past year to in achievement, you can see that the scores really didn't move much. We're looking for this coming year to hopefully see the achievement scores to start to move more.
Sorry. So again, there, like some of our different areas to grow here, as we had pointed out, just that achievement and the growth for our target group areas jumping from one year to the next. You see nice growth for the target group of students in ELA and math, like we had pointed out before. But our achievement is a big area that we need to focus on. And again, as our students grow more and kind of like match and exceed what is considered typical growth for students, which we are approaching as we had touched on in previous slides, that's where you'll start to see the achievement increase even more. But again, just to kind of like touch on some of the pieces there, like I'd mentioned before with the chronic absenteeism rate, this is where I talked about the 3-year weighted average, why like I was all excited about it when we got our report card. Hey, I know that we had made like really great gains, but that whole 3-year weighted average is what kind of like threw that rate off, and we didn't see, well, we saw like a tiny dip. We did see a really nice increase in our overall attendance though for our target group, which was one of the areas, or one of the reasons why we had a little boost in this area as well.
These are the areas where we do have gaps in both content areas. They are unfortunately the areas where if you have gaps, usually you see them. So these are areas where we are specifically focused moving forward in planning with our C3 teams, our teacher planning teams in each content and grade level, and in our, especially where we'll make the biggest dent is in our small group instruction time in reading and math to be able to help these students make advances that they need and accelerate their growth. This is again a visual representation of gaps. So these are achievement scores for demographic areas, and again, if you have less than 20 students, it won't show a bar. But you can see a representation of the different groups and where their achievement lies. One positive here to point out is our 2 or more races in ELA took a good jump. That was one of our places that we had a gap, and there actually isn't a gap between 2 or more races anymore.
So then this is one of the kind of like the focus areas is your 8th grade math scores as well. And again, we've made a lot of great progress in this area, but as we had talked about, there's still things that we can focus on. This is our overall like math achievement. So we've seen growth in math, not as rapid as growth as what we've seen in ELA. And again, as we grow more and we kind of start to meet and exceed what is typical growth, that's where you start to see an increase in the achievement as well. So this is kind of where I'd say one of our more top areas to really like focus in on is our 8th grade math achievement scores, especially because this is one of the areas that like counts twice on the report card when we go into kind of like the graduation rate or like our 8th grade math scores as well.
Is it because of the fractions, Daniel?
That plays into it, yeah, so hopefully we're hitting into it.
So to bring us to wrap up here, our road forward, and this is all everything we're going to talk about in the next 2 slides here, stuff we're already doing. It's in process. Some of it we already started last year. Some of it is new stuff this year. But first and foremost, just to continue the things that we have started that have been effective and have been working. And holding high expectations of ourselves and our kids. We need to expect that our kids will achieve at high levels or they won't. And so just like Chad talked about before, it's making sure that our adult mindsets are where they need to be as well, so that we can get our kids where they need to be. Using data to strategically target skills and plan instruction. Again, that is especially important in our small groups. 5th and 6th grade have small group instruction time built into their day. And this year we built a time into the 7th and 8th grade, more middle school like schedule called Flex, where they have 3 days a week, 30 minutes a day of small group instruction in both content areas. And we continue to work forward on honing that to make it as effective as possible and give our teachers the tools that they need to do the job. And then overall, our road ahead for our staff professional learning is teacher clarity, making sure that our teachers are crystal clear on what kids need to know and be able to do so that we can help our kids get there. So that first step is learning intentions and success criteria. The success criteria are the student-facing goals for each class period. Student expectations, helping kids know how they're doing in class, letting them assess themselves and let their teachers give their teachers a little bit of feedback as well. And then our teachers and students giving each other meaningful and timely feedback to help move learning forward. That is one of the most effective practices in learning. And then perhaps most important of all, are you going to take this one or you want me to get it?
And exactly as Tim had mentioned, this is a really huge focus for us, and we've sent out numerous surveys kind of related to this year. This is one of our big goal areas for the entire building. And when you meet and discuss with other buildings, this is, I would say, kind of like a district-wide goal for this, and that's that building the school climate that fosters belonging for students and staff. You're not going to see a score for this when you like really dive into like a school report card, but I'd say that this is probably going to be one of the things that's most impactful, because when students feel like they belong, they're more willing to engage in their own learning. They're more willing to actually show up to school and be engaged in what's going on and participate in extracurriculars and everything outside of that. So this has been, exactly as I said, a pretty big focus for us as we go throughout the year. We've been gathering data from those student surveys and trying to make sure that we have absolutely every student in our building that has a connection with an adult. So we sent out that initial data, that initial survey at the start of the school year, and then we did another one right before holiday break there, just so we can go through and see, hey, have we gained in any areas and what's work that we still need to be doing here. And we've been talking about different practices that teachers can do as well, just to create that like very welcoming and inviting environment for their students. Nice. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Any questions for us?
I've got one. That with the target group, like what are the biggest challenges that you have with just helping that group?
One, honestly, is the attendance piece. A lot of times the students that are in the target group tend to have some of the lowest attendance rates too. So like Daniel said, if we don't have them at school, it's hard to make an impact. So that attendance process that our teams use is super important to be able to get kids to school. And it's kind of neat because on my end, we talk about the attendance and individual students in our meetings throughout the week. But then I'll see Shannon send an email, like she sent one today about a student who hasn't been to school, haven't heard anything from parents when we've called to verify an absence in 3 days. Home checks are happening. So like all that process in action is pretty cool to see. I would say attendance is one. And then getting our both our staff the skills and knowledge, and then the structures in place to provide some really effective small group instruction where they need it at the time that they need it. That's one of the big things that our ELA and math task forces are working on moving forward, is working on that small group piece, because that's where you can make the biggest impact, especially in closing gaps. Anything? Yeah, of course.
I hate to interject, but Daniel and Tim, they're doing really good work with their ELA task forces, and one thing that has come up with their teams, but it kind of stemmed from the elementary work, is, you know, you've students, when you talk target group, right? So let's take math, for example. You have some students that are struggling maybe between the 11th and the 25th percentile. And then you got some students that are really struggling, so between the 1st and the 11th percentile, right? Through our process in Act 20, what we're doing is when a student is in that 1st to 10th percentile, you know, our title teachers, our title reading specialists at the elementary school, they are spending a lot of time with them. I give you Melody Knight's a good example. Melody and I sat down and we were talking at McGee about how she could best support some of these students that were really struggling. So what she's doing is she knows that some of these students actually get to school at 7:30. And so there's this window between 7:30 and 8:15 or 8:10 or so before school starts, before the classroom gets rocking. And Melody's actually pulling them before school and doing some very intensive literacy-specific supports. And that's that target group population that we're referring to. Okay, so years of support with them at that level, that's going to help. The one thing we're still kind of wrestling around with, though, is, you know, that's the right word, who is the person that at the middle school, because we've got Laura Gleichner, who's a title teacher at the middle school for reading, but who's that mathematics person or team or source that provides that intensive intervention for students in that 1st through 10th percentile in mathematics? I don't know if we have an answer for that yet, but I know that we've been having the conversation in the past. So maybe more to come on that, but when you said target group, I thought, boy, that's really key. So.
Thanks, Kyle. Bless you. Any other questions for us? Before I get out of your hair then, I just want to add one more thing. So we have 2 tour dates coming for the public at L.B. Clark on January 24th, one at 11 a.m., one at 2 p.m. We're going to be doing some things, not that I hope I don't blow up the 11 o'clock one, but we're going to be doing something kind of special at the 2 o'clock tour time. This has been something that's been kind of in the works, but we are dedicating our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science area with the 3 big labs there and the science classrooms to our longtime science teacher who passed away, I think 2 years ago now, Bob Franke. So if people would like to join us, if you've been in L.B. Clark and seen the L.B. Clark sign about L.B. Clark himself, there will be one exactly like that right in that science wing, and we're calling it the Robert C. Franke Science Center. And at 2 o'clock on the 24th, Bob's family is going to be there, and we're going to do a little dedication for him. There isn't a teacher who I have ever heard kids or parents talk about more than Bob Franke. He instilled the love of learning in a lot of kids. So we wanted to recognize him. So come on out and join us if you want to be there. Thanks.
Now I'm kind of choked up. I had Mr. Franke in 8th grade, and he taught me and all of us all the chemical symbols with little rhymes he made up, and I'm a chemistry supervisor today, and I would have him to thank for that. That is super cool. Thanks. And last, Diane.
Yeah, I know you've been sitting a long time with lots of information. This one will be short. The Lighthouse usually has less data because of their smaller cell sizes. So I just added a little bit of information in the beginning for you to see some changes from the year to year. So the first slide shows you some open enrollment for the past 5 years. And then over on the right-hand side, a breakdown of where the kids are in each of those grade levels, just so you could see the difference. You remember us sharing this information in the fall. We did lose some students at the charter school due to some of the changes that were required through DPI, but I thought it was a nice way to show you a breakdown of numbers. We also, in the fall, shared this slide with you to talk about the way that we do have some shifting demographics in the charter school. Last year, 293 students. This year, 227 students total. And you'll see that last year we had 48 students who were traditional middle school, high school students. This year, 59 students. So kind of that shift in going from kids that are open enrolled outside of our district to the charter also supporting kids within our district that might learn differently than what we provide in the traditional school. So here's some 3-year information on their report card. You can see that 2 of the years, it's called alternate rating, and I'll show you what that means. And then you'll see this past year, they actually had enough students to be able to receive a score, so a 63 meeting expectations. You'll see that a huge chunk of that was achievement over the other areas. I'm going to flip a slide and then I'm going to come back a slide. Here's a definition of alternate accountability. So we don't have enough students in each of those subgroups. So instead of using the forward for results, we use the star. So students take the star 3 times a year. And then what the charter needs to do is really focus on a specific area. So last year we had focused on students who were basic or below basic in reading and math, and we set expectations for growth. So now going backwards, you'll see in that AR area, in 21-22, you'll see satisfactory progress. In 22-23, you see needs improvement. That's because of the goals we set in the areas of math and reading. They met their goals. In 21-22 and 22-23, we did not meet our goals. So this year, the focus is again on math and reading. So it's always interesting. You don't really know until the report card comes out if you're going to have enough kids to actually have a score or not have a score. I included demographics of the charter schools. So starting with, I see I didn't put them in order. That wasn't so smart. Starting with at the top, this past school year, you can see the students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and EL students. And I am sorry, you'll just have to flip those other 2 around so you can see how those different areas are changing. Our demographics have changed. This shows performance for the Lighthouse students in 23-24. You can see that ELA, higher performance than math. So we did have the charter school. We shared goals with you from the charter school, focused on ELA and math. If you remember, Ryan Hansen is also a part of our group, so we've been focusing on both of those areas this year. You'll see that in the area of ELA that the charter school does outperform the state, and in math just the opposite. So obviously both of those areas are very important and areas that we continue to work on. And then I thought, just because the charter doesn't have as much data, just wanted to share with you from their report card some of the prep courses that are available. You'll see that advanced coursework, we are way below the state on advanced coursework. So most of our students at the charter are taking Edmentum, which doesn't offer advanced coursework. You'll see dual enrollment. So some of the kids that are taking classes in a blended model at the high school are also getting college credit. You'll see that they exceed the state in industry recognized credentials. So we have students out there getting credits while working, and then also work-based learning. And that is short and sweet for the charter school. Any questions about the charter? You've heard a lot of numbers today. Okay, just a couple of other things. We had asked Jenny Schneider to be here for just a summary of holiday giving. I did send that to you in your email so you can take a look at all of it. I think it's just important to mention that we had over 100 students that were taken care of during the holiday season. That was with gifts or with food or with Shop with a Cop. So lots of interactions from our community. I do want to just publicly thank the Optimist and the Octagon Club, the Rotary, Grace Congregational Church, St. Peter the Fisherman, Two Rivers Senior Center, current and past teachers at Two Rivers, family and friends of Two Rivers staff, community members, high school band, high school chorus, high school National Honor Society, high school HOSA and FCCLA, LBC Student Council, and the TR Police Department, and many, many other individuals who have made donations to the Angel Fund for supporting our kids through the holiday season. Really incredible. Spring elections on Tuesday. The office team drew names. We always stand right under a camera so you can see that we're drawing names out evenly. And we have 5 people running for the 4 open seats. So Jen, Tim, Gary, and Lori, along with Catherine Delkey. So those will be the names on the vote on April 1st. Not an April Fool's joke, very true. April 1st will be that election. And then the person who receives the lowest amount of votes goes on again next year, because that was filling Nicole's seat. So Lori came into Nicole's seat, and then that seat is up then the following year, next year, so the lowest vote goes there. Of the top 4, yes. And then we also just attached for you, as you know, and I sent this in email this week, Mary Kay and I were able to be on Be My Guest this past week, where we were able to talk about the tax increase and talk about how vouchers work and how school funding works. We did share that with our staff as well, so that if people had questions, they were able to hopefully have those questions answered. Mary Kay provided a phone number, so if people are listening tonight and they want to have conversations, if after they listen to that they still want to have some conversations, we are willing to do that. We had a total of 5 calls in asking us questions. One of them was a person that called us twice, so we had 4 community members asking more questions, and I feel like they felt that time was helpful to them. So definitely call if you have questions about any of those topics. And that's all.
All right, thank you, and thank you for doing that and being willing to take those calls, and I'm sure you continue to be willing to do that. And I know people who have called are very happy with being able to really learn about what's the deal. So we've got 5 meetings to announce yet. Last agenda item, January 16th, Finance Negotiations Team at 4:45 in the District Office Conference Room. January 27th will be our next regular board meeting, 5:45 here in room 218. January 29th, 4:45 in the District Office Conference Room, Policy Team meeting. February 3rd, Facility Technology Team will start up at 4:45 in the District Office Conference Room. And finally, February 10th is the next regular board meeting at 5:45, room 218, right here. So I look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, everybody.